Okay, I'm gonna do the teaching in English just for those that would want to listen to it afterwards that might not understand the Afrikaans. But any questions you can just put in Afrikaans, or if you want me to translate any of the English terminology that I use to Afrikaans, then you can just put it in the chat box. Thank you, Michelle, for the opportunity again to be on your platform and just for what you do and trying to get information out to people. It's good to see everyone online again, and thank you for joining us. Um, this whole topic, it was actually a very impromptu um, teaching decision because it actually came from a question that Michelle and I had. We had a discussion about during the course of the week, and the question was, do I believe? So her husband asked me, do I believe that it's possible for limbs to grow back? Like if it was amputated or if you had it lost, or if you were not born with it, do I believe it's possible for limbs to grow? And my answer was an immediate yes, because I do honestly believe that it is possible. So I want to go into a few mechanics as to just to support my answer in that. And what do we believe? I think that is the main scale that I often get challenged with is what do you believe? Because it will be to you according to your faith. The word says, let it be unto you according to what you believe. So as you believe, that you will receive. Now, God doesn't say only the good. He doesn't say if let it be according to your faith only for that which He can establish as good. If your faith falls to the other side on the scale for any other reason, whether it's negativity or if you have faith more in a lie than in the truth of Yahweh, that will be unto you what you believe. So it's always interesting to me. I always go back to the Israelites because I think they had the most incredible teachings and encounters in the wilderness. And some of them, the remnant that took the land, they believed God has already given them the land. Because their answer, or Joshua said, God has given us the land, we will go and take it. And that remnant went into Canaan and they took the land because their faith was, God has already given it to us. There's no maybe, He has given it to us. The Israelites that didn't go into Canaan, they thought they were going to die in the wilderness. They believed they were going to die in the wilderness because they say, God has brought us into the wilderness to die. And God said to them, let it be according to your faith. If you believe I'm a cruel God, then to you I'm going to be a cruel God. You will die in the wilderness because you believe this is what's going to happen. But if you believe that I'm a good father, if you believe I'm a good God, that I've already given you victory, then that is what you will taste. You will taste and see that God is good if you believe that He is. So I think it's good to weigh our faith and our definition of faith. What do we believe truly who God is and who we are in Him? And what is possible when we combine our faith of who we are in Him and who He truly is? Because God doesn't change. He is who He is. Nothing can change it. Our faith in Him doesn't change Him. It changes us. So I'm going to start it off with a bit of quantum physics because I have a very deep passion for quantum physics. And if you were to ask me when I was at school if I would ever feel this way about sciences and physics, I would have denied it. But now I see God in everything. So quantum physics isn't necessarily sciences. So quantum physics proves how the universe works. And it is proving the mysteries of Yahweh. It is proving the mysteries of God. So quantum physics is essentially the foundation of it would be the beholder determines the outcome. So I think in a previous teaching we explained how they had the light particles that they would shoot through this light gun and the light would then respond according to what the observer wanted it to respond to. So I want to give a quick example of another experiment that is quantum physics related. We actually prayed into this last week with our intercession, because they have this building and they have a programmed machine in this building. It's a robot. It is not AI, it's not artificial intelligence. It's just a plain, simplistic robot that has a program to flip a coin. All that this machine does, it flips a coin. And then it records whether the coin falls on heads or tails. And then it records how often does this happen. So it's completely random. That is all this machine does. It recorded just on its own programming that 50% of the time the coin will land on heads, 50% of the time it will land on tails. So for physics research, they put people in a room completely separated from this machine, from this robot. They would put a person in a room. This person would write on a piece of paper, I want the machine to flip heads. That was all they wrote on the paper. They would leave the paper in this room. This room is void of anything and everything else and has no contact with this robot. And then they found this robot. So on the paper is written, I want the machine to flip heads. And then the robot started to flip more heads. The coin just started to flip heads more often. So they would put another person in the room. They would write on the paper, I want the machine to flip, or the robot to flip tails. They would leave the paper there, and then this robot would start to flip tails. And that proves that the intention of man, it alters even inhumane objects. Objects that doesn't have a consciousness. Our consciousness, our intent can alter literally everything. And the word tells us the beholder determines, or science says the beholder determines the outcome. The word says, as you believe, so you will receive. And you determine the reality around you. Your heart and what you believe determines your reality. So if quantum physics connects us to the frequency of God, because frequency is essentially what everything is. Everything on earth is energy. We are energy. God is energy. And we are born of God. He created us. He breathed his breath into us. So if he is energy, we are energy. God is frequency. He is color. He is light. He is sound. And everything together creates, because he is only a creator, or not only a creator, he's the only creator God. So everything that he does creates. There's nothing that he does that doesn't have some sort of birthing or manifestation coming from what he says. So the word tells us that God spoke light into existence. He spoke light came to be. He spoke words and light came to be. So sound and light merged together and the earth was formed. So if we look at how God creates, simply by intention, he adds his intention. This is his desire. He said, I created man for my desire. From my desire, I created man to have union with man. Yeshua came, and at the cross and at his resurrection, he said, I have drawn all of humanity into me. All that I am now, so are you in the earth. All that Christ is now, so are we in the earth. We are not Christ who walked the earth in flesh. Yes, we are that as well, because that is part of who he is and what he did. So yes, we are that, but we are not limited to that. So we are not only the Christians that try to follow the same lifestyle as he followed or that he presented to us. He said, as I am now, so are you in the earth. Christ now is resurrected and he's free from all death and all decay. That is who Jesus is. There's no record of death in him. Jesus does not recognize lack, not even in his fleshly walk on earth. He never recognized lack. He never recognized a crisis in terms of when the disciples would come to him and say, oh goodness, what are we going to do here? Or I don't know how to deliver this person from epilepsy or the demons. Yeshua never that was never a resistance to him, because he didn't recognize when I say recognize, he did extend grace to them and trying to explain to them what to do. So he taught them, but to him, there was no framework of this is not possible, because he's one with the Father, and the Father who creates is in him. He is one with the Father is one with him. So there should be no resistance to what is possible. There should be no blockage to what is possible. So Yeshua never recognized lack. There's no death in him. There's no loss in him now. There's no sickness in him. And that is what we need to shift our awareness to, our consciousness to. Because if we keep thinking, and I say this with a lot of grace, because all of us are going through a renewal of the mind. All of us are going into, how do we truly step into the mind of Christ? How do we live from the mind of Christ? And that is not simply having the fruits of the Spirit. So I'm kind and I'm patient and I'm loving and I'm friendly. That's not only the fruits of the Spirit. That is not only having a spirit of self-control. That is not only being able to forgive easily. That is the minute things, and that's big things, but it's the minute things if we consider the rest of who Christ is and what he is, and we are that. We are the resurrected Christ. So we have to renew our mind as to who do we believe he is, and what do we then believe we are. And we are very quick, because I do think there's a lot of fear attached to, and a lot of the new age terminology attached to frequency, energy, and sound waves, and quantum physics. And people say sciences and God does not go together. You can't be a Christian and believe in physics or sciences. And I think that is a very narrow-minded for us to be convinced of that. Can we challenge our thinking in it? Yes. And can there be a debate? I love what Justin Abrams always says. He says, everyone is powerful enough to disagree. And absolutely, we can have a discussion like this, and everyone can have a space in their heart where they say, I don't fully agree with that. We don't have to be offended by each other's belief, but we can disagree about it. But I do think it's important for us to weigh that if we shift aside the fear attached to sciences and physics and all the pain that has come from that, because there has been a lot of distorted information coming from that, a lot of false information, a lot of manipulation coming from that field, that does not mean God is not in it. Because I believe that God is proven through physics. That is how we understand the spiritual realms. So quantum physics, in its essence, explains to us how the spiritual realms work. So if you go, I'm not going to go only into quantum physics, because it's going to take us literally the whole teaching if we go only into that. But there is a theory which is a very valid and solid theory for quantum physics, saying that there is something can be dead and alive simultaneously. Something can either be true or false simultaneously. And the only difference that shifts it, or the only factor that shifts it from the one side or to the other, is the intention of man, is what we believe. So they did this experiment, so I'm thinking about the experiment, where they had a cat in a cage or a box, and they had poison in this cage as well. The cat didn't drink the poison, but there was a nuclear sort of trigger thing in the box with this cat. And the radiation that came from this little device that they put in there caused the poison to be released from the bottle. So this cat, his body and his senses absorbed the poison. So even though the cat didn't drink the poison, he was still being poisoned because of the nuclear, the radiation that came from this, not nuclear radiation. So their theory was this cat is simultaneously alive and dead, because it is alive, but it's also dead because it's being flooded with poison, it's being poisoned. So essentially, this cat is no longer vibrant, filled with vitality, alive, and eventually the physical body will die. So it seems like a very simple experiment that they did, but it carries so much weight, because we can look at this situation and we can either say, no, this cat is still very fully alive, like his heart is still beating, he's still very alive. And someone else will look at it and say, no, this cat is dead because he's being poisoned, he's dead, he's as good as dead. So the intention of man will bring truth to that matter. And quantum physically, they prove that what we add our attention to and intention to will manifest. It will manifest. It will be to you, unto you, according to your faith. So I want to give a scripture. Now, faith brings our hopes into reality and becomes the foundation needed to acquire the things we long for. It is all the evidence required to prove what is still unseen. That's Hebrews 11, verse 1. Our faith brings everything into reality. So this verse says, because it's motivational, it says it brings your hopes into reality. But if it can bring hope into reality, it can bring anything else into reality, can it not? Because we can't separate the law of the Spirit. If God says faith can bring the yet still unseen as if it is, it will bring it into manifestation, then it doesn't matter what it is that you are adding your attention to, it will become real to you. It will manifest in substance. And that is if we look further into quantum physics, apart from just the theory that the observer will determine the outcome, so the particles will start to respond to the intention of man, quantum physics also proves to us this statement, because God says it brings everything into reality, and it is a foundation to see the evidence of something that was unseen. So to see evidence of something that was unseen means you need substance now. Evidence means you can now see it, you can maybe even taste it, feel it, touch it, hear it. That is the evidence of what was unseen. And quantum physics proves to us that when we add our attention to something, the subatomic particles, the energy field, they call it energy, God calls it spirit. The spirit world starts to conform to your belief system, to your thought pattern. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the full truth. It's going to conform to your truth. So you will live your truth. So the subatomic particles and the energy, spirit, starts to conform to what you believe is true, because you're adding your faith to it. Because this is my intention. This is what I think. This is what I want. This is where my hope is. Again, remember, it might not always be for the best of our benefit. It can be anything that you add enough faith to, and it will start to collapse. So physics prove that if the intention is there, the energy particles start to vibrate according to a different frequency, according to the frequency of vibration that they receive from the observer or man. We are the observers. They start to vibrate in accordance with what your belief system is or what your intention is. And when they vibrate to a certain frequency, eventually that collapses. The wavelength that energy forms collapses. And when it collapses, it turns into substance. That is how God created. He had an intention. He had a desire. He spoke words. The words are alive because his words are beings that came from his mouth. And that formed the earth. So there was a wavelength of sound. There was an intention and a desire. He spoke it, so there was a wavelength of sound, that there was enough faith, because God believes who he is. He believes in himself. There was enough faith in what he wanted, and that wavelength of particles eventually collapsed, and that formed the earth. So we create our world, or we destroy our world by what we believe and what our intention is and what we add it to. And if you believe something with enough faith, there's another verse that I want to add with you. In Hebrews 12, verse 2, we look away from the natural realm, the earth realm, and we focus our attention and expectation onto Jesus, who birthed faith within us and who leads us forward into faith's perfection. That is why we have conversations like this, because it leads us into faith's perfection, meaning we need to journey this. We need to enter into that grace. He says, I've birthed faith in you. That is what I've done. The faith you now live by is the faith of Christ. I've birthed it into you. But it's your responsibility to nurture this baby of faith. You need to nurture it. You need to feed it. You need to care for it, because it needs to be perfected. So he leads us into faith's perfection. His example is this: because his heart was focused on the joy of knowing that you would be his, he endured the agony of the cross and conquered its humiliation, and now sits exalted at the right hand of the throne of the Father. So he did all of that so that we can just step into him, and we live by the faith of Christ, his faith, which lacks nothing. But let me just go to the notes here quickly. So to get to the why we spoke about the quantum physics is, if we understand that quantum physics proved to us, and there's a connection. There's a connection between what we understand in the science or in the physics field is actually a revelation of who God is. That is a revelation of how we created. It reveals to us the spiritual world, that there are realms in the spirit. We believe that. By faith, we believe there are realms of the spirit. We believe in the realm of the kingdom. So if we believe there is a realm of heaven and the realms in the spirit, and we believe all these things that the word say God is, did he not say, I will prove my word to you? I will make sure that you understand my word fully. And if we can connect the dots between what we now understand of physics and the heavenly realms, we can see that the mysteries of God is being revealed to us through this. Through how they are starting to prove things of the word. They don't even have to believe in Christ to still prove the word is true. This is facts. And I think it's beautiful how it starts to give us a greater understanding of who we are and what we are, and how do we shift our mindsets and our belief systems. And how do we shift our lives? How do we alter our lives and the world around us? If God said to you, I am calling you as a company of people to, along with me, present the earth to my Father. Because Yeshua, that is the reward of his suffering. It is us and a redeemed creation, a restored creation, that everything that was fallen is back in life, back in restoration. And the earth belongs to man. So if we want to alter and change our environment, if we want to change our circumstances, our community, our families, ourselves, how do we do it? And I think this is such a great key. If we start to understand and connect all these things, and with all of the other topics that Michelle has been having on the platform, how to really take care of your body, how do we understand the body, what foods do we eat, what do we interface with constantly, all of that plays a role in who we are, who we believe we are, what your belief system is, and how do you then world around you. So if our desire is that I want to be a life-giving spirit, because that is who God is, so that is who I need to be, then we need to understand our intentions and what we do is not minute. If we believe enough that God said he heals the brokenhearted, that is what the word says. And Yeshua is a word made flesh. So his words need to become flesh to us. It needs to become flesh to the bones. So if someone is ill, and we can add enough of our faith that God said, there's no sickness in me, it shouldn't be on the earth. So man, remove sickness from the earth, because the earth has been given to you as a possession. You own the earth. Adam owned the earth. That was his. This is ours. So God can instantly wipe everything that is bad and just restart everything. But he won't, because he can't go against himself. He can't go against his own intentions. He said, I want to give man an inheritance. I want to give man earth. His realm. Earth is a realm for man to govern with me. Then earth fell. So it's man's responsibility to redeem earth, since it belongs to us. And if we understand that we have so much access to the resources of heaven through how we understand heaven and how we understand the realms and how we understand who we are, what we are, that changes the way we affect our sphere of influence. Because the word says to us, everything pertaining to life and godliness has been deposited into you. So Yeshua did what he needed to do. He did what he needed to do. He came to give us life. He came to reconcile us with God. And I heard, I'm not sure who said it. I was at a conference recently, and I can't remember if it was Justin or if it was Tracy Brown. She was also one of the speakers. But one of the speakers said that the laws that God gave in the Old Testament, it was almost, he knew they wouldn't be able to keep it. He knew it would be too hard for them to keep it. And that sounds a bit cruel if you only think of that, saying you create laws just for, and you know we're not going to be able to keep it, but you create it anyway. But what if his intention with that is because he knew they wouldn't be able to keep it? It caused a desperation for grace and mercy. It made us realize we need Jesus. Because when Jesus came and he said, I fulfill the law, I have reconciled you with the Father, we are one with the Father, I'm one with you, you're one with me. No separation, no record of separation. And that is the fullness of grace, it's the fullness of mercy. And there's a theory in the psychological field where they say you can't experience good without bad. You can't see holiness without evil. And some people, there's sort of a debate as if, is this true or not? But I tend to lean to the side that would we really understand grace and mercy fully if there was no desperation for it? If the law if they were not able to keep the law, when Jesus came and said, I free you from this, the liberation that came with those words, that tasted good to them. They saw the goodness of God because he released them of something that they wanted to perform in and they couldn't. There was no other way. If Jesus did not come, they wouldn't be able to attain it. And the goodness of that tastes so much sweeter when you have tasted the bitterness. Is that not true? So I do think that some things, because even if we go into the topic as to healing and, growing limbs and stuff like that, then oftentimes I would hear a comment saying, but okay, well, why doesn't it just happen? Why does it have to be so difficult? So, we are going to get into that because I do have a theory for that. But I think if we don't first taste a need for God, or if we don't realize the need for God, we won't taste the sweetness of his mercy and his grace. So there is a bit of a double side to it, because God created order out of chaos. Chaos was first, and order came from that. He always creates order from chaos. So chaos is even in God in a very holy and sovereign way. But chaos is inside of God. He birthed all of creation from within him, and he separated light and darkness. He drew order from chaos, but everything is created in him, because the word says to us in Ephesians that all things were created in him, for him, through him. All things. So chaos was in God, and from the chaos came order. Always. Jesus, even in his walk, there was always chaos before order came. There was always confrontation before peace came. So there's sort of these two sides to it. And I think that tests our faith, because that causes us to put on a weighing scale. Okay, what do I believe? Or I'm just going to sit back and think, okay, well, my words won't affect anything. Or do we understand that in order for us to see brokenness or to heal brokenness, we have to see brokenness? You have to be in something to create a new record of healing. So going on to flowing into the next point of discussion is, how do we then, if we understand that our bodies are a heavenly realm, is a heavenly realm. Our body is a heavenly realm. Because if God said, I have deposited the kingdom inside of you. The kingdom is a realm. And I think that is how we can make this very simplistic. Our faith, we can make it very simplistic. Do we believe there's a kingdom of heaven? Yes. A kingdom of light? Yes. Do we believe Jesus came and he said, I made you one with my Father? Yes, we believe that, because the word says, and that is our definition of the faith that we have. So if we believe there is a kingdom of heaven, that is a realm, because the word speaks of the realm of the kingdom. And Jesus said, I have now deposited the kingdom of heaven inside of you. So we believe there's a kingdom. We believe we exist. Yet we find it difficult to believe the kingdom is already inside of us. We still have a bit of a separation theology, thinking heaven is there, I'm here, so I need to try and connect myself to God, and I need to try and reach out there, and I need to try and step in there. When we believe there's a kingdom, we believe he put it in us, then it shouldn't be our theology saying, I need to go try and get there. I need to try and get into the heavenly realms. You are already there because you are that. And Yeshua said, you must be a mirror image of my kingdom. Not only who he is, the kingdom, be the mirror image of the kingdom. You can only mirror something if you behold it, if you look at it, if you stand in front of it. I behold this, so I see the reflection of that. That is what a mirror is. So you need to behold the kingdom. And God will not keep something hidden from us and away from us if he asks us to mirror that. Then we need to shift our belief into, I am already seated in heaven. Yeshua said, you are seated in heavenly places. You are co-heirs with me. To be an heir and to receive the inheritance, Yeshua said, you receive the inheritance. You are co-heirs with me, so you receive the same inheritance. To inherit something, there needs to be a death. There was a death. Yeshua died. So we are co-heirs. So we have already inherited everything in the kingdom. Everything already belongs to us because there was a death. So that is the truth. The truth is that our spiritual bodies, because we are spirit, soul, and flesh, the spirit belongs to God. He created it. It belongs to him. It is one with him. Yeshua said, the moment you receive me, you are with me, seated in heavenly places. That is the end of that. So your spirit man is already seated in the realm of the kingdom of heaven, next to Yeshua. That is your truth. That's a reality. Because what we see here, all these things that we can touch and taste and see, that becomes real to us because we entangle too much with it or much more with it. And we think we are separated from the heavenly realms. We need to try and get there. But the chair and everything here is very real to us because we interface and entangle with the earth realm more. But there the word says, look away from the natural realm and turn your attention to the truth. The heavenly realms is more true than the earth will ever be. Yeshua says this is a vapor. Vapor meaning it's mist. It's mist before us. Anything can shift in a moment. Everything can change in a moment. What is true and everlasting is the kingdom of heaven. And we are there. So your spirit man is seated in that place with him. Our flesh is here in this earth realm because we need to govern it, because it has been given to us as a possession. So you have your flesh here because that is where God placed us. Not just to try and survive, not just to try and see how good a life we can lead here, and then if we do good enough, we get to go to heaven one day. We are already there. You say the moment you receive me, everlasting life has just been given to you. Life, everlasting, eternal life has just been given to you the moment you receive it. And Ephesians 4 says, everything, the whole earth, all of humanity have been reconciled with God, encamped by God at Yeshua's resurrection. So if all of humanity, and I want to throw a bit of a curveball out maybe for some people, all of humanity means even the unbelievers, because we are all the image of God. He created man, all man. We are all his. We are all the children of God. And Ephesians 4 says, he encamped the whole of humanity inside of him, believer and unbeliever, inside of him. He drew us in. So we have man that is supposed to be governors on earth. We have our spirit body that is seated in heavenly realms already. And then there needs to be a connection point between the two. And that is our soul. Your soul is a connection point between the two. So in the Hebrew alphabet, I don't know how many of you might have gone into the Hebrew letters, into the Hebrew alphabet. The Hebrew letters are living beings. They are the words of God that creates it. They function at a certain vibration, at a certain frequency, and that frequency causes a collapse in the earth system. That is how God created, with the letters that he spoke. So the sixth letter of the alphabet, the number 6 is also connected to man. The sixth letter of the alphabet is Vav. And a Vav is a peg. It is a connection point. It is like a ladder between the heavens and the earth. We are that. Man is that. Your soul is a connection point between the heavenly realms of light and the earth system here. So when I say that Ephesians 4 says we are all encamped in him, the difference is in the consciousness, the awareness of who Jesus is. Are we aware of who he is, and we have received him as our savior, acknowledging that he has made us one, that he is the one that encamped us back into God? That is a consciousness of then being a believer. You believe that. Unbeliever is not lesser the image of God. There is just no consciousness between the goodness of God and them. So there's no believing in who Jesus is, and that separates believer and non-believer. But that's a topic for a different day. But the consciousness, so why I mentioned that is because whether you're a believer or an unbeliever, everything will be according to what you say. They did another experiment, and I have to thank, I've got one of my very good friends, Lana. She made me aware of all these experiments just a week ago. She read a book, and it's entertained me for this whole week. So they did another experiment, I think it was in Washington, where they made meditation pods around the city, and people could go there everyone who had any sort of moral compass that wanted to heal the city. So they wanted crime to go down. They wanted murders, rape, child trafficking, all those things to go down. That is the intention of the people. Not all of them were Christian. They opened it up to any religion or atheism. Anyone could go, as long as this was your intention. So the people would gather together in these spots. I don't know if it was rooms or what it was, but they gathered together and then they would simply bless the city of Washington, just blessing, because you don't need to be a believer to bless something. I have met a lot of people who's atheists, and yet they understand there's a dynamic to blessing something. You want to bless it because you want goodness for that. So you bless it. The blessing isn't only in Jesus, the understanding of blessing. So they blessed the city. All of them had their intention towards, I want to see my city healed. And they were Hindus, they were Buddhists, they were atheists, Christians, everyone together. And they, because this was not a spirituality research. They didn't do a research for spiritual stuff. They did this research for quantum physics, to prove quantum physics. So the intention of these people shifted the city. So since they started that, I think they did it for 6 weeks. Maybe I'm wrong, but about 6 weeks. They kept on doing this practice. And in those 6 weeks, every sort of darkness in the city collapsed. Crime went down. Violence in houses went down. Abuse went down. Child trafficking, everything. All that is classified as this is not good or healthy for a city, in statistics went down because of the blessing of the people. They turned their intention towards goodness. So we have our spirit in heaven, our flesh on the earth, and we have our soul, which carries our intention. Your heart is part of your soul system. Your brain is part of that. That is your operating centers. Your brain and your heart is your operating system. Your belief system sits in your heart, and then it flows through to your brain, and then there's an operating system which will have it flow out. So what your intention is will create the world around you. If our soul is not aware of the truth of God or not fully convinced of the goodness of God and what we have access to, then we are in this, our soul hangs in the middle. So the body is here to facilitate the truth of God. It's here to manifest it. That is what the flesh needs to do. Jesus did it in the flesh. He made the word, became flesh. So all that is in heaven, he came and showed it on the earth. Now he said, your turn. You get to do it now. So God says something that your spirit knows exactly who God is and what he does. If your soul is not connected to that consciousness, to that awareness and that truth, then you'll be less effective. And when I say you, I mean we. We as humanity is less effective when we are not fully convinced of the truth of Jesus and the truth of God and the truth of the kingdom. And that is why we have so many denominations in the earth, because everyone wants to adhere to their own truth. They set the parameters. Everyone's setting the parameters of what we think is the real truth. And everyone is not wrong. Everyone has facets of truth. But God is leading us into a space where we, through stuff like physics, where he proves who he is, what he is, and what we have access to. Because to just believe the little nuggets isn't efficient enough. The church at this point, the body of Christ, isn't effective enough to bring full restoration to the earth, to remove death from the earth, to remove illness from the earth. So our consciousness needs to be connected to the truth that is in heaven and what we do on earth. And your consciousness is measured by your faith, or your faith is measured by your consciousness. Your faith will have the strength or the weight as to what you are aware of and what you deem as truth. This is real to me. This is truth to me. And when you add your consciousness, you add your intention to that, that becomes substance in the earth. So our bodies is necessary for this to happen. So you form pathways between heavenly places. So Remember, we said we have a physical body on earth. We have a spiritual body in the heavens that is always seated there, and your soul can connect the pathways. And we do that simply by prayer and what we believe. If you believe for something, you form a pathway. There is trading routes. The word in Ezekiel and in Revelation speaks of trading routes. Not all trading routes is godly. You get the Babylonian soul trade, where there's a lot of, I think I mentioned that in the trauma sessions. That is how trauma happens. If there's trauma, your soul fragments, and the Babylonian soul trade trades on the souls of man, the fragmented parts. That is what causes trauma and extends trauma. But if that is possible for that, then it has to be possible for everything else, because that is then a spiritual law. If the blueprint is there for one thing to be a certain way, then that blueprint can be applied to anything else that we believe for. So if we understand, okay, so trauma causes pathways that leads us into the places of depression, that leads us into places of anxiety and fear and stuff like that, because the experience here in the body and the soul being convinced of what just happened, not turning the attention towards the truth of God, the spirit realm, the freedom from death and decay there, the trauma tells us differently. The trauma programs us to now think the world is hostile, I don't trust anything, I want to get out, I am in fear constantly. Your soul attached to that, and that forms the pathway. So it forms pathways into illness, it forms pathways into lack. So I see it as trading, as a route. Like there's this little umbilical cord that goes from what you believe to something. It needs to go somewhere because it has to manifest. God says it will be to you what you believe. If you believe that the world is now hostile, it's going to start creating around you, and that your soul forms these little neuro pathways in your brain, but also in the spirit world, because we have a spiritual energy field around us. Again, people might feel uncomfortable when we say we have an energy field around us because it sounds new agey. It is not. It is truth. That is how we pick up on each other's frequency, on each other's vibe. You pick it up because everyone has an energy field around them. And that energy field either carries negativity or death or fear or depression, and you pick up someone's depressed without saying a word to them, or it carries excitement or joy or whatever else that is good, and you feel excited when you're with that person because the energy fields start to communicate with each other. So we charge our energy fields with what we believe, and then the world around you will start to create according to that. Michelle, am I doing okay? I'm not jumping around too much.
No, you're doing very good.
Okay. If I am jumping around too much, or someone needs me to go back a step or two, you guys can just show me. Okay. Okay, so going to how we started the topic as to, do I believe that that it's possible to grow limbs when you've maybe lost it, been amputated, accident, or were never born with it? My answer is an absolute yes. And this goes for everything else that we need or desire or hope for. Whether it goes for health, whether it goes for something like this, whether it goes for finances, for barrenness, if you want a child and you think it's not your portion, but you have a desire for that. So I'm gonna use this as the sort of explanation for my theory. But it can be connected and allocated to literally everything that you trust for. So what I'm hoping for is that this will challenge your level of faith. Like, how do you understand your own faith? So I said to Michelle when we had this conversation that I do believe it's possible for things like that to happen because it has happened in the earth. So we know of miracles that has happened. We've heard and we've seen in the past. We have that a phenomenal group of fathers of faith that has went before us, like in the 1800s, 1900s specifically. But I mean, even before that, Yeshua did it. Jesus performed miracles in the earth. So maybe let's start with him. So he performed miracles in the earth, and he said, you will do more than I have done. And they say with confidence that if they had to write down every single thing that Jesus did, not only in his 33 years of life, physical body on earth, only the 3 years of his ministry before he completed his ministry on the cross, if they had to write down everything that he did, every miracle, every encounter that he had, all of the books on earth would not be able to contain the details. That is how much Jesus did. And then he says to us, you will do more than I did. I mean, if that is not a load of responsibility that is given to us, then I don't know what is. Also honor, the honor and the privilege to see him establish blueprints in the earth and then say to us, go run with it, child. You can do all of it and more than I have shown you in the earth. So a blueprint, we all know what a blueprint is. If you want to build a house, you have a blueprint for something. If you want to design, any engineer will tell you, I want to create something. What do they create? Or what do they do first? Blueprint. They form a blueprint of something. The blueprint is the core idea. It is the heart of which the creation then flows. So you wanted an engine, they designed a blueprint for this engine, how it's going to work, what its purpose will be. Then they created the engine. The intention was added to the desire. So now we can access the blueprints of heaven. Because God says, come into the storehouses, come into the libraries of heaven. I've got angels, I've got 7 spirits before my throne, I've got all of heaven backing you with resources. And I think most stories, all of the canon stories that we read, everything that is in the canon is the blueprints. That is our blueprints. That is our records that we are able to engage with. A record is something that has substance. It happened. There is a record of something. It has happened. It is real. It is facts. It can be researched. It can't be denied. There's a record of truth there. So the whole of the canon says to us, these are the blueprints that you have access to, and more. There's more blueprints because Daniel and Ezekiel says there are things in heavens that the canon that was locked up, books of heavens that were locked up, that were not placed in the canon because there were a specific generation that would receive it. Daniel says there will be a generation that will taste all the knowledge and all the understanding of God, but the time was not now. It wasn't for them then. And then Paul reiterates what Daniel said when he says, there will be a generation that will not taste death. There will be a generation that will not lose. And there will be a company of people that will taste the fullness of every promise of God. And that is in Hebrews 11. I have the whole Hebrews 11 here, but I'm not going to read all of it. But it starts from right at the beginning, everyone's faith journey. It goes through to Abraham, how they had their faith. And then just close to the end, Paul says, there were heroes of faith commended for their faith. Yet they lived in hope without receiving the fullness of what was promised them. But now God has invited us. And this now and us means everyone that has been resurrected with Christ. Because the word says you are now a new creation, new being, new kind. There was an Adam and there was a generation of Adam. And then the second Adam came, and now there's a generation of this Adam, meaning we look different. We are different than the first ones. So we've got the whole of the Old or the First Testament, their journey with faith and how they walked it out. And now Paul says, okay, but we are a kainos being. We are a new creation. We aren't the same as they were. We are now in Christ. Now, God has invited us to live in something better than what they had. faith's fullness. This is so that they could be brought to finished perfection alongside of us. That's also a clear, true scripture that the cloud of witnesses are still alive, now still active, because Paul says, this company of people going forward now, we will go from glory to glory to glory to glory. Every generation since Yeshua's the resurrection went from glory to glory. But the word says that there will be an ultimate glorified group, generation, that will carry the fullness of faith, the fullness of the resurrected Christ. We will live it out. How did I get to this? I've digressed a little bit. Okay, so we were talking about how to then, what do I believe? So we've got everyone from the Old Testament. There were records, there were blueprints. So it's there. Yeshua came to do miracles, and then he said he will do more than that. Then when we look at history from Yeshua's resurrection all the way until now, there's still miracles happen now. There were key times in history where there were this group of people that would walk in the absolute miraculous. I mean, we had Reese Howells, we had John G. Lake, Catherine Kuhlman, all these people, St. Francis from Assisi that were in the 1400s. I mean, these people walked in absolute mystical revelations. Like they understood the word, and most of them were, well, maybe not the fathers of faith of the 18 and 1900s, but especially the 1400s, the time when the saints had a lot of voice, but the people didn't believe them because to them it was heresy. So they were crucified for their faith. They were killed for how they believed, but they fully believed that God is energy, because there was no language for it then. Quantum physics wasn't understood then as it is now. So when they said God is energy, so I'm energy. God is a creator, so I can speak to all of creation, because the word says that all of creation yearns for the manifestation of the sons of God, to receive the same salvation that they, the sons, have. For something to yearn, it needs a consciousness. Something can't yearn if it's not conscious. So if the word says all of creation yearns, it longs, it's crying out consciousness and seeing the sons of God to receive the same salvation as the sons have. What is our salvation? Eternal life, freedom from death and decay. That is our salvation. So what does creation long for? Freedom from death and decay. So our purpose is to remove that from the earth. So now we have these faith people that have gone before us, and they performed miracles. We have heard of the conventions. We have heard of Smith Wigglesworth and how he raised people from the dead. And Paul says that is elementary things. It's elementary to raise someone from the dead. Now, if I had to sit and have a coffee with Paul and he says to me that's elementary, then I am in serious trouble, because I've never raised a body from dead. And yet Paul says that's minor things. That is the elementary things of the kingdom. Then we need to understand there's so much bigger things than simply hoping for a miracle, praying that there will be a miracle. A miracle is good, and I'm not saying don't pray for miracles. It's essential for us to pray for miracles. But if we only think by chance God might do something miraculous, by chance, where's our faith really in who God is? Because the blueprint is established. And that was my theory when I said to Michelle, this is how I'm standing with what I believe, that it's possible to grow limbs back, because it has happened. Because in the miraculous, we've seen and heard that people have grown limbs. There was a convention, and someone who didn't have an arm got an arm. Someone who didn't have eyes in their sockets suddenly had eyes in their sockets. It happened in the miraculous. So if it happens in the miraculous, it should be able to happen only by faith, because the blueprint exists. It's there. We can see it's there. One, because Jesus did it. And two, because in the miraculous it has happened. They can't do something that there's no heavenly blueprint for, because God is the only one that creates. He's the only one that gives life. So if they did it then, there has to be a spiritual law attached to that. There has to be a record, there has to be a blueprint. So it should be possible for us to do it only by faith. And that is where our faith needs to be made into perfection, because we need to have enough confidence in the blueprints of heaven, in the spiritual law of who God is and who he says he is, and not put him on the witness bench every now and again, doubting who he says he is. Truly having faith that if this is possible, and God says with me, all things are possible, because our flesh bodies is of it's I want to say more simplistic than our spiritual bodies. And if God is able to sustain our spiritual bodies in a realm that we can't permanently see if we don't engage with it often enough, then how can he not care for this body here? How can it not be possible for us to do it here if he says everything is possible to you in the spirit? Come and get it, child. Come and collect. Take it. It is yours. The promised land is yours. And a promised land can be anything. It can be health to your body. That is a promised land, to have a land flourishing. We are Eden. We are Eden. We are the kingdom. That is land. Often in my trauma sessions, I would speak of the soul and the mindsets as land portions, because the word says we are Eden. So the promised land can be yours. Take it. Go and take it. Do we believe enough that God said, I have already given it to you? So our faith needs to adjust to that truth. And is it instantaneously? No. We need to establish the trading routes. So there's enough faith for the miraculous to grow limbs back. And we can see it because it has happened. So there's a trading route for that. Can that trading route, or can that pathway, that faith pathway, be strengthened? Definitely, because we don't hear of that every day, yet it happens. So something needs to shift in how we understand the miraculous and how often it can happen. And if that happens often enough, it won't be miraculous anymore. It will be our faith walk. It will be real substance. This is who we are. This is what we have. We have full access to the heavens because it is in us. We have full access to the impossibilities of Yahweh. That seems to us impossible, but to him it's completely possible. So the more we lean into that, the more we take his word and cause it to become flesh to us. Not only motivational to us, flesh. It needs to become flesh to our bones. Because that is what Jesus is. He's flesh. The more we lean into that, the more we open up the pathways. And I believe, I said to Michelle, I think the reason why we haven't heard, well, I've never heard of someone saying, no, well, I go around and I, give limbs to people. I pray for them and limbs grow. And they say it nonchalantly. We only hear of it when it was a miracle. And I think the reason for that is because the record of that connected to just having faith, enough faith and not doubting, hasn't been established in the earth yet. There's a record of the blueprint being connected to the miraculous, so that can happen. But on this side, there's no record attachment yet with just having faith for it and just understanding that is our inheritance in Christ. And that is essentially what all of this is. It is our inheritance. He has birthed faith in us. We need to expand what we think faith is and how do we live it out. Faith isn't only believing in Christ. Faith is a substance. It is something tangible, and it creates or destroys the world around you.
So Bianca, I just want to add something in here, because everything you're saying is connecting so many things that I just want to add on. When we look at the bride, the Hebrew word for the bride is kala. And that word, in essence, if you look at the letters, I have a whole teaching on those as well. But when you look at the letters of kala, it talks about the vessel that has to finish what has already been started. So our whole purpose on earth as the bride of Yeshua is to finish what he has started doing. And then I just want to connect some different dots here as well. I've got so many things that I've been writing on the side here. But what our call is righteousness. And righteousness is being in right standing with Abba Father. And that is that connection between heaven and earth. It is that righteousness that comes from. So our faith should align with what he wants and his purposes for earth and for people around us. And, you know, whatever we hope for and pray for and speak into existence. So, yeah, just being in that right standing with Abba Father. And his word says that he has life in abundance for us, and connecting that storehouses, that abundance with our earthly existence. And so I just wanted to talk about two things on that. The one is, so my stepdad had cancer, and they had to amputate his leg just above his hip bone. So he couldn't sit after that. He struggled quite a bit with it. But one of the things, maybe you will have something to say on this afterwards, but one of the things he experienced afterwards was spookpyne. What would you call that in English?
What pains?
Spookpyne.
Well, it's like phantom pains.
Phantom.
Like
yeah. So he experienced pain in a leg that wasn't there anymore. And my mom had to go sit on the bed, and she had to go and massage the leg that wasn't there. Or he would tell us the leg is laying under the bed right now, or his foot is cold, or things like that. And we were just talking after my husband asked you about growing limbs. We were talking about that, and I said to him, isn't that because our spirit man isn't experiencing lack? So he is in fullness, and he still has a whole leg. And so your mind is connected to your spirit and connected to your body. And so your mind is telling you what your spirit is saying is, I still have a leg, which your body doesn't have. So there's that connection problem, but your mind knows that the leg is there. And so that was just an interesting thing for us to talk through. You might have something to add on that, but I just want to jump from that to another thing. And that is the meaning of faith in Hebrew, because as you said, Hebrew it's a very full and purposeful language, and it's a living language. And the word is emunah. And it is, sorry, let me just minimize my screen. I took it and I put it here on the side for me. So the root letters of the word emunah is Aleph, Mem, and Nun. And if you put those together, it says to be strong, firm, and diligent. And the word faith, more precisely, connotes confidence and trust. And so the faith in itself means that we need to have confidence in the ability of God, of who he is, of his character, but it also talks about obedience, and that is that righteousness, the call to be his bride, and walking in obedience and bringing into existence what exists in the heavenly realms. I think that is all my side notes. So I'm going to give it back to you, but I just wanted to add those in.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. I think just to go with, or I want to just say something that you said last now. I don't know who said it. Someone said it recently, and it really caught my heart, that God's love language is to be believed. He wants to be believed. He wants us to fully believe who and what he is. And that pleases him. That pleases him when we take his word as substance, and he says, this is what I want for you, my bride. This is what I've given to you. This is what I'm calling you to. To believe him is an adoration unto him. It is worship unto him when we take him by his word fully. And just to go back to the phantom leg, it's so interesting to me because that is exactly, I mean, that's such a perfect example as to how the body and the spirit actually interface with each other, whether we are consciously aware of it or not. You know, I want to, let me see if I can find it quickly. There was a teaching that I did last year sometime. Sorry, I should have just got it. I didn't think I was going to mention it, but it basically, I spoke about our awareness and our consciousness. So as this they can prove, our consciousness, 90% of our thoughts every day are the same. We are only conscious every 10 seconds of every minute. So for the rest of that 50 seconds of that minute, you run on autopilot. You run on your programming. Only every 10 seconds of a minute are we conscious of what we are believing. I mean, that should make us really consider what are we interfacing with? What do we allow to program us? Because we aren't every minute of every day in our soul dimension aware of that. The spirit is not, the spirit functions in perfection. So your spirit still receives information. It still does all that it does. It still, it sees the fullness of God, all those things, because your spirit man is seated there. But your soul, your consciousness, you're only aware of what you think every 10 seconds. So if we dwell on, I want to say death, if we dwell on things that does not carry life, you're not going to be aware of that every minute of every day. You're only going to be aware of that every 10 seconds. And if you then put your intention to changing that, that is working out your salvation, your inner peace with fear and trembling. Your salvation has been given to you by Christ. But your shalom inside of you, that you have to work out. When God says, work out your salvation with fear and trembling, that means work out your shalom, your homeostasis, your peace and tranquility within your mind, within your heart, within your body and your mind. How do we see our relationship with our flesh, with our body? Do we think we are separated from it? Do we think it's just, it is what it is, it's going to die anyway? No, that is connected to thoughts of death. If we think, oh, everything's going to pass away anyway, it's going to die anyway, then we focus without maybe the intention of it, but we focus on death. If we think, oh, one day when I die, I'll get to heaven, then we shift our focus to death being the gateway to experience heaven. When Jesus said, I died so that you can now experience the fullness of heaven. Anyway, so every 10 seconds you're aware of it, yet you move in and out of the spirit 7 to 8 times per second. So your soul is only conscious of its mindset every 10 seconds of a minute. Yet you move, whether you're aware or unaware of it, you move in and out of spirit realms, energy fields, quantum fields. That is what spiritual realms are. You move in and out of that every 7 to 8 seconds, or 7 to 8 times per second, not even seconds, per second. Your spirit goes like that, to and fro on these pathways. What do you believe will manifest? What do you believe will manifest? That is how quickly the spirit responds. Yet we are unaware, and we don't often think of what we think because we're just too busy, and we interface with everything else that draws our attention away. But to get back to the limbs, there was still that understanding and awareness. The body, the physical body of your dad, still has a leg. There's no loss to it. There's no lack to it. And so the flesh wants to respond to that. The flesh wants, because there's the blueprint. The blueprint said, this is what I'm supposed to be. And I have it there. So it should be here. And there's still this. And, I want to just give a testimony. It wasn't mine, and I didn't speak to the lady herself. I heard it from another friend who was at a women's camp a year or 2 or 3 years ago. And on this camp, my friend was there. She actually saw it when there was a lady, or the woman who ministered to the people. She ministered from a place of actually healing, doing healing miracles and stuff like that, because she received a healing miracle. So her, I think she was barren, and she didn't have a womb. Like, she didn't have a womb. So it wasn't just womb being shut. She didn't have one to start with. And then God gave her one. So he told her, come and collect one. There's storehouses in the heaven, not only for finances, but also for body parts. So he said to her, come and get a womb. Like, you are spirit, this is your home, come and get a womb. So in prayer, by faith, because she was desperate for this to work, she went into the spirit, she fetched the womb from the storehouse, and she got pregnant. She fell pregnant. Obviously gaining a womb. So with her own life testimony of this is absolutely possible, and the framework of the storehouses filled with body parts in the heavenly realms, she started a ministry. So on this women's camp that she was hosting, there was a lady who was struck by lightning, and her one side of her body was I think also a leg. I can't exactly remember all the details, but the one side of her body was really, really damaged by the lightning. And there was an organ also that was just, it didn't function at all anymore. So the organ was still there, but it didn't function at all. And something in her leg was also not functioning. So she walked also with a very severe limp, and her body started to go skew a bit. So this woman started to minister to her. A very key thing that she had to do, she had to forgive the lightning. She had to extend forgiveness to nature, to the lightning for her being struck, which was really a key thing to me. Again, going back to the verse that all of creation yearns, meaning there's a consciousness, meaning they are alive. So she extended forgiveness towards the lightning for having struck her. And in that ministry, the lady who ministered, I don't know what her name is, she went into storerooms, into the storehouses. She went to collect the organ that this woman needed. She went to collect nerve endings, muscles, all that she thought might be necessary for a leg to function again. And this organ, I think it was a pancreas or something, that didn't function anymore because the lightning went through. And she administered it by prayer. She administered it to her. The friend who told me this testimony stood there and saw how this woman's leg started to reshape and extend, because the leg was shortened because of the trauma. So the leg started to extend as if muscles and nerve endings and everything, the bones, everything started to just reshape itself. And when that woman got up from the floor, when that lady got up from the floor, she stood up straight. Where she couldn't, she was walking to one side. She stood up straight, and since then she has never had, well, I don't know now, I haven't spoken to her personally, but a testimony afterwards were that she went to the doctor and her pancreas or whatever organ it was that they needed to heal functioned optimally, perfect. She got a new organ. And I also have a testimony where my gallbladder was replaced. There was something wrong with it. And I said to God, I'm not going to go to the doctor because they will remove it. And it's part of my temple furnishings. And I don't want my furnishings to be removed. So our only other option is he replaces it for me. And he did. He replaced my gallbladder. I'm convinced of it because the way the pain was there, and then suddenly it wasn't like a gallstone needing to pass or anything like that. Instantly. And I was in prayer, and I could feel something in my core being taken and being replaced. So I could feel a physical sensation of something happening in my body, and afterwards the pain was completely gone. So that is, I just wanted to say that testimony because it's absolutely possible the body for us to go and collect it. So is it easy? No. Like, I don't want everyone to think, okay, well, I'm gonna go to the next guy I see on the road and I'm just gonna, you can do it, go for it. I'm not stopping anyone to go and pray for that. I just don't want, because I know some people then say, but if it was that easy, why didn't everyone just experience that? And I don't have the answer for that. I don't know why some people have to walk out more of an intense record than someone else. I do think it's the pathways of faith that, yeah.
So, in that case, I also think like just to be obedient to the Spirit, because there are things that our Father wants us to do, and there are things that He doesn't want us to do, where He would intervene in different ways or not. But I just want to come back to the word emunah. I was in church back in South Africa, and a guy was talking about faith. When he was a kid, he wanted to walk on water because it's possible. So that is how you test your faith. And he, one day after school, he decided, now I'm going to put on my swim shorts and I'm going to walk on the pool water because I have faith. And he said the first time he went there and walked straight up to the pool and fell into the water. And he was like, okay, you know what? I had my shorts on. I thought I was going to fall in. I had something on in case. And so he got out of the pool and he went to go get other clothes, put on normal clothes, walked into the pool, fell again. And he said that's not enough faith. And he took his brother's school clothes for the next day that was already ready against his closet, put on those clothes. He's like, now I have faith. Now I know that I'm going to do this because I can't ruin this clothes. Walked to the pool and he fell into the pool and he got out. And he was in so much trouble for it. And he was just testing his faith because he has faith in God, so he should be able to do this. But then if it's not your calling to walk on water, if that's not what Abba Father is expecting of you, then you're not going to walk on water. So it comes in alignment with what his will is. So I think in that case, like a lot of times we just need to be sensitive to the Spirit as well. Yeah, and he walks a different road with each of us. And I know, especially in illnesses, and especially like my stepdad had cancer, there would be nothing more that any of us would have wanted for him than to grow back his limb and have no more cancer in his body. But he walked a certain road, and I don't have the answers for it, but what he experienced, and he walked it out. And so we're all called in a different way, and we all need to respond to the Spirit in a different way. But yeah, I think it's just,
and I think
important.
Absolutely, and connecting to that, I think also we need to recognize that our records on earth and our family line records play such a huge role. So I think it's Joseph Sturgeon who had on one of his teachings, he said often people will ask him, because he doesn't, I don't know if he has it now, but when that teaching came out, when I listened to that, he didn't have a heavenly tongue, a prayer language. So people would ask him, like, isn't that like one of your basic entry stuff into ministries? You at least need to have a prayer language or something. I don't know. They judged him like crazy for not having one. And he said to them, it doesn't alter, or it doesn't change his ministry for him not having one. It's not going to affect your call on earth if you don't have a prayer language. But then he went into it because he did ask God. So if any of you have ever listened to any of Joseph Sturgeon's stuff or read his books, he's so funny, and he's got such a childlike relationship with Yahweh. So he asked God, why doesn't he have a prayer language? Why can't he get one? Like, he would want one, but why is God not giving it to him? And God said to him, the record of your bloodline has shut it down. In other words, there wasn't enough faith to keep it alive. Now that I said that way, so God said your bloodline shut it down. Essentially, that means there wasn't enough faith to keep it alive. So then I showed him that certain bloodlines, especially if a lot of the religious, the belief system in the family line, in the bloodline, is very religious, very conservative. So if you are from a background or family bloodline background that's very conservative church, like I was, I was reformed, you know, then there's certain things that was not allowed because it wasn't in their parameter. And I'm not saying this to judge any denomination at all. Like, that is okay. And I honor my background because it has shaped me in many ways. And the foundation is Jesus is life. That's it. And if Jesus is life, then we can work around the rest. And so, but because of that, I mean, I remember the first time I was in a charismatic church. It wasn't even, it was an AGS church, you know, just, I couldn't lift my arms. I could not raise my arms to worship God. It literally felt like something held me because I wasn't raised in a way where that is okay, where that's safe to do so. So my belief was, we can't do this. We shouldn't be able to do this. Just the same as now, I'm confident to speak to angels and to trust the angels and to believe that God's living letters are entities in heavens, and you can engage with them, you can interface with them, and everything is alive in the heavens. It's like Chronicles of Narnia. Everything lives. You know, now I can believe that, but it took me time to shift my own framework. Do I believe this is true? The word says that, so it has to be true. And then you build your faith and you believe, okay, this has to be real. Although the record of my bloodline said, you know, angels is not something to communicate with, God doesn't use them anymore, or whatever the reason might be. So Justin's finding was also where God said to him that your bloodline has shut it down in speaking in tongues. They were also very conservative. They didn't think it was holy to be able to do that. So the belief for that was shut down. So he now has a record that needs to be redeemed. So he might be able to redeem it, or his children might redeem it. You know, sometimes it's generations going forward. You lay the foundation, and your generation that comes after you will take it further and further and further, because everyone starts from the platform, not from the floor. So we build something, next generation takes it higher. But basically, you know, with all of this, there's a lot of things to take into consideration as to why certain things happens instantly for some people and takes a longer journey to walk out for others. And I think there's grace in all of that, because all of it is still rewriting the record. It is still restoring and redeeming.
Are there any questions for Bianca around this topic, or anything anyone wants to add on? Bianca, thank you so much. I think it's such a in-depth topic that you can do a couple of sessions on it and still go deeper into it. But I really appreciate that you put this time, that you made time for us today, and that you came and shared, and we went over time again, but it's always good. No, it's good. Thank you so much for making time for this, and for everyone who joined, and I hope that you all got something from it, and that Abba Father will work in you. And I think also with the family records that you mentioned, is just to ask the Spirit, as well, to lead you and guide you in those things. If there are things that needs restoration, or that needs just to be healed, then he will show you, and he will show you how to do that as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's never it's done now, so it's not, there's no portion for you. There's always still a portion available.
Absolutely.
So thank you for everyone who joined. Sorry, Bianca, you want to say something?
Sorry, I wanted just to add with that what you said. Sometimes, because I feel just sort of dropped in my spirit now, sometimes it's also necessary for us to ask Abba to heal our faith. Because sometimes we have faith for something and it doesn't happen the way we expected or wanted it to happen. And that can hurt us. It can hurt our relationship and intimacy with God and with Jesus and who he is and who we trust him to be. So sometimes our faith needs to be healed, and just, that he will just come and heal it. So that if someone feels that might affect them, change something for them, then yeah. Thank you so much, Michelle. It's always enjoyable when I'm on this, and thank you for trusting me enough to share my opinion with everyone. And thank you just for giving the opportunity and for what you do and steward with this platform.
Thank
And
you.
thank you everyone who listened, especially to the end, to now.
Yeah, shalom to everyone.
More,
I think Shabbat is now finished there by you guys, but shalom and have a blessed week further.
yes, thank you. You too. Bye.